Welcome to the deep dive. For centuries, whispers of a colossal, shadowy figure have haunted our deepest forests, leaving behind, well, colossal footprints and a trail of perplexing encounters. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of North America's most enduring and, frankly, perplexing enigmas, Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It's really more than just a campfire story. It's a phenomenon etched deep into our culture.
That's absolutely right. When we delve into Bigfoot, we're talking about a creature typically described as, large, hairy, bipedal, sort of a hominoid figure.
Right.
And it's most often associated with the dense ancient forests of the Pacific Northwest. What's truly fascinating, though, is that the name Sasquatch isn't some modern invention. No, it's actually an anglicization of Saskats from the Halkomelem language spoken by First Nations peoples. It's a real testament to how deeply rooted this figure is in ancient traditions.
Wow. And while many might instinctively think of Bigfoot as, a uniquely North American puzzle, this whole concept of a wild humanoid, it's actually incredibly ancient, isn't it? And global.
It really is globally pervasive.
Think about it. These figures, they share remarkably consistent characteristics across continents, walking on two legs, bipedal locomotion, and imposing size, and a body covered in thick hair. You can see in the European wild man of the woods, which was prevalent in medieval folklore, from the 13th to 15th centuries? It's a very similar archetypes, isn't it?
It is.
The kind of primal figure existing right at the edge of human civilization.
Absolutely. And that enduring fascination with these wild humanoids, it hints at something deeper, a universal human impulse maybe, to categorize and understand the unknown, especially that liminal space where humanity meets untamed nature.
Right.
Our mission today is to journey through this fascinating intersection. We want to explore how this global archetype sort of transformed into the modern Bigfoot we know today, especially how it really coalesced around those newspaper stories back in 1958. We'll unpack its deep historical roots, delve into its reported characteristics and alleged behaviors, and then, crucially, examine the most famous pieces of evidence and the intense scientific scrutiny they inevitably face.
And finally, we'll peel back the layers to explore its profound cultural impact and its enduring psychological appeal. Our goal for you, the listener, is to provide a comprehensive, well-informed view, helping you understand the phenomenon far beyond just a simple monster story.
Exactly.
So consider this your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on this captivating topic. Get ready for some surprising facts, maybe a few genuine aha moments, and a deeper understanding of why this legend continues to captivate millions. Let's really unpack this, shall we?
Definitely. To truly grasp the Bigfoot phenomenon, we have to journey back, way back, far beyond modern sightings, to what scholars sometimes call the ancient wildman global archetype.
Okay.
The core idea here is that humanity's fascination with wild humanoid creatures isn't a recent development. It's a universal thread woven through folklore that predates written history, really, across continents.
It's a universal fascination, isn't it? These mythical figures consistently share core traits across diverse cultures. They walk upright, bipedal, they're imposing in size, often described as giants,
Huge.
and they're covered in thick body hair. It's almost as if there's some kind of primal blueprint for something unknown, something wild and powerful, just at the edge of human understanding. But what does that tell us about ourselves, that this archetype appears everywhere?
Well, it suggests a deep-seated human impulse, maybe. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about that wild man of the woods in European medieval art and literature, 13th to 15th centuries.
Yeah.
These figures were often depicted as feral humans, sometimes noble, sometimes brutish, people who had maybe regressed after abandoning society, living as hermits in the wild.
Right.
This widespread motif, it really highlights a universal fascination with that boundary, that liminal space, the line between the ordered world of humanity and untamed nature. It's where our control ends, right? And the wild begins. And that's a space ripe for projecting our fears and our wonders.
So this isn't just some random monster. It's a manifestation of a deeper psychological need, perhaps. This ancient archetype provides the foundational framework, the bedrock, upon which the modern Bigfoot narrative is built. It underscores this deep-seated human impulse to categorize, to understand, and maybe even to fear or respect the unknown, especially at the farthest reaches of civilization. It's a primal human reflection, really.
Exactly. And that reflection finds unique and profound expressions in North American indigenous narratives. Long before modern ape-man stories, diverse Native American tribes held rich, complex traditions of enigmatic, often ape-like creatures. While Sasquatch from the Halkomelem and Salish languages is the most widely known today, thanks to the media, it's just one name among many. Each name carries its own unique cultural weight and interpretation.
Right. Like, for instance, the Algonquin peoples, way over in the east, they referred to similar entities as Witiko or Wendigo, often associated with darker themes like greed and cannibalism during harsh winters.
Yes, quite different.
Meanwhile, the Ojibwe believed in the Rougarou, an apparition that could appear in times of danger, sometimes associated with shapeshifting. What truly differentiates these from the modern Bigfoot, I think, is that many other nations described large, man-like creatures with special powers, sometimes acting as messengers of warning to humanity, urging them to alter their ways, to live more harmoniously with nature. That's a very different interpretation from just a simple monster or a hidden animal, isn't it?
It is.
It implies a relationship, a spiritual connection almost.
It absolutely does. And these aren't just vague myths either. Specific accounts further illustrate this profound diversity. You have Claire Pearson's tales from the Nehalem Tillamook, for example. She recounted a giant wild man with exceptionally large feet, measuring a striking 36 inches.
3 feet long. Wow.
Nearly 3 feet, yes. And members of plateau tribes, like those at the Warm Springs Reservation, identified what they called a stick Indian.
Stick Indian.
Yeah, potentially hostile beings known to maybe steal salmon or disorient individuals by whistling in a certain way that caused them to get lost in the woods. This suggests a very real, tangible presence in their world, integrated into daily life and survival.
And these narratives aren't just historical footnotes, are they? They continue to be shared and believed on reservations today. They represent a profound spiritual connection to the pre-contact past and embody the resilience of indigenous cultural heritage, especially in places like Oregon, where it's deeply integrated into traditional belief systems.
Absolutely.
So these ancient, profound traditions truly set a rich cultural stage. But for all those centuries, these creatures were local legends, deeply personal. How did they jump from these scattered regional tales to a national, even global household name? That's the big shift.
That's where the mid-20th century becomes the true crucible, the real catalyst for the modern Bigfoot legend. It all really began to coalesce around a very specific incident in 1958. Now, prior to that, reports from North American settlers had been surfacing sporadically, since the late 1800s, early 1900s, detailing isolated encounters, discoveries of unusually large footprints. In Oregon, for instance, the earliest historical record of Bigfoot sightings by settlers dates way back to 1904. Accounts of a hairy, wild man in the Sixes River area, similar reports coming from miners and hunters across the Pacific Northwest. It was simmering.
And then you get these really dramatic incidents that just grab attention. The 1924 Mount St. Helens incident is a perfect example.
Ape Canyon, yeah.
Right, Ape Canyon. Gold miners claimed they were attacked by giant apes who threw rocks at their cabin. This event was widely reported in the Oregon press, further fueling the legend and really capturing the public's imagination. It created this sense of a wild, untamed frontier still existing.
Definitely. But the pivotal moment, the one that truly launched Bigfoot into widespread recognition, occurred in 1958. And this popularization stemmed directly from a journalist named Andrew Genzoli of the Humboldt Times. He reported on these unusually large footprints discovered by loggers working up in Northern California. What's crucial here, and often overlooked, is that the loggers themselves, they had already coined the catchy, memorable name Bigfoot to describe whatever was leaving these enormous tracks.
Ah, so it wasn't Genzoli who came up with the name.
No, not at all.
But he was the one who broadcast it to the world.
Exactly. He initially thought it was just a fun, if dubious, letter, something that made a good Sunday morning story, a local curiosity.
Yeah.
But the immediate, almost explosive fascination it generated, it led to follow-up articles, other newspapers picking up the story, and ultimately national media attention. That's how Bigfoot officially became a household name, a singular label that just stuck.
And this evolution of perception is truly remarkable when you look at it.
It is.
The legend adapted from those nuanced indigenous interpretations, the messenger of warning, the guardian of the land, to the primal, dangerous creature often depicted in, say, 1970s popular culture, like those monster movies.
Right, the scary version.
And then, surprisingly, it shifted again to a friendly, misunderstood environmental symbol by the 1980s, maybe influenced by films like Harry and the Hendersons.
That definitely softened the image.
The 1958 naming provided that single, identifiable label. It allowed a previously diffuse, varied concept to coalesce into a widespread cultural phenomenon. easily recognizable and discussed across the nation.
What's fascinating here, too, is the subtle but significant dynamic of how settler narratives shaped public perception.
How so?
Well, while indigenous knowledge was ancient, documented by ethnographers as early as 1865 regarding Siatko, their term for hirsute wild men,
Right.
its widespread public articulation often came in response to settler experiences and media interest. It underscores a potential marginalization, maybe unintended, of indigenous perspectives. Their deep, complex understanding was often overlooked or only amplified when it could be used to explain experiences the dominant Western populations were having.
Interesting point. So this act of naming and popularizing by settler culture really cemented a new kind of Bigfoot in the popular imagination, separate from some of the older traditions.
Precisely, it streamlined it in a way.
Okay, so let's move beyond the origins and into the creature itself. What does it reportedly look like, and how does it behave? There seems to be a strikingly consistent set of physical characteristics that defines Bigfoot across thousands of eyewitness accounts.
There really is. It's typically described as massive, muscular, bipedal, walking, upright, humanoid, or ape-like creature, usually somewhere between 6 to 9 feet tall.
Which is already huge.
Huge. But some accounts, remarkably, even claim creatures as tall as 10 to 15 feet, though those are much rarer.
That's enormous. And the weight estimates commonly range from, 500 to 800 pounds? A truly formidable presence.
Absolutely. Eyewitnesses frequently describe broad shoulders, a lack of a visible neck. The head just sits on the shoulders, basically, and disproportionately long arms, sometimes reaching down past the knees.
And the hair.
Hair color is usually reported as black, dark brown, or dark reddish hues, often described as shaggy or matted. But here's an intriguing detail you hear sometimes. Some describe its facial features as more human-like than ape-like.
Really?
Yeah, which adds this unsettling feeling for witnesses. It's not just an animal, maybe something closer.
And, of course, the name. The creature undeniably got its name from its enormous footprints, reported to be up to 24 inches long and 8 inches wide, sometimes wider, with a human-like 5 toes.
Exactly. What's even more interesting, and a point of intense debate among researchers, is that some plaster casts purportedly show dermal ridges.
Dermal ridges, like fingerprints.
Exactly like fingerprints on the bottom of the foot. For many researchers, the presence of these unique skin patterns, supposedly too complex to fake convincingly, especially with older technology, that's a critical piece of evidence suggesting a real biological entity rather than just a prop or a hoax.
And what about the eyes? I've heard reports about glowing eyes.
Yes, in alleged nighttime sightings, which are surprisingly frequent given its supposed elusiveness, its eyes are sometimes described as glowing yellow or red, adds this eerie, almost supernatural element to the encounter.
So that's the physical profile, more or less. But what about its behavioral quirks and paradoxes? It's generally characterized as non-aggressive, right? Shy, even.
Generally, yes. With a perceived shyness and a seemingly human-like intelligence contributing to its extreme elusiveness and infrequent sightings, that's the common narrative.
Yet, despite being shy, wilderness travelers frequently report this distinct, overwhelmingly unpleasant stench. Often described as a mix of rotting meat, garbage, wet dog, just awful.
The Bigfoot smell, yeah. It's a common element.
And then there are those unusual screams and whistles. Remember the plateau tribes connecting those whistles to their stick Indians who could disorient people?
That connection is fascinating.
It's a curious mix of evasion and clear, if unusual, communication attempts, maybe.
It seems that way. That connection links modern encounters right back to ancient traditions. Reported movements include crossing roads at night with surprising speed, striding furtively through dense forest and mountain terrain, or even digging for ground squirrels in rock piles, suggesting an opportunistic diet.
I've even heard of roadrunner reports describing Bigfoot casually strolling across busy freeways, seemingly unconcerned by traffic.
Yeah, those are bizarre. If true, it paints a picture of a creature incredibly confident in its environment, almost oblivious to human constructs.
That paints a very specific and almost contradictory picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Other alleged behaviors include throwing rocks.
Rock throwing, yes. Some researchers interpret that as territorial displays or maybe a form of communication like a warning, get out.
And then there's wood knocking.
Right, where the creature supposedly strikes trees with wood or rocks, creating this loud, rhythmic sound. Some believe that's a form of long-distance communication among individuals, like jungle drums.
These aren't just random acts. They suggest a degree of intentionality, a purpose behind them.
And it gets even more elaborate. Alleged structures attributed to Bigfoot include unusual formations of broken and twisted foliage, like trees bent and interlocked into arches.
Arches, really.
Yeah, or even teepee-like formations constructed from saplings. These are hypothesized by some as territorial markings or maybe even temporary shelters.
Oh.
Even more dramatically, there are reports of entire deer skeletons suspended high in trees.
Suspended? How high?
Way up, suggesting immense strength and perhaps a unique caching behavior, storing food away from scavengers.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, and perhaps most perplexing. This notable aspect of reported interactions involving a perceived curiosity towards humans, particularly children.
Yes, that comes up quite a bit.
Witnesses describe Bigfoot peering into vehicles or windows, often with an almost inquisitive gaze rather than outright aggression.
Most anecdotal sightings depict solitary creatures, it's true, but some reports describe groups of 2 or 3, suggesting some kind of social structure, however small.
And the nocturnal aspect. Many sightings occur at night.
Right, leading cryptozoologists to hypothesize nocturnal tendencies, despite the fact that all known great apes are primarily diurnal, active during the day. That's a significant biological discrepancy.
Which raises an important question.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is precisely that thematic tension. Bigfoot is consistently characterized as shy and elusive, a master of evasion.
Right.
Yet simultaneously, we have thousands of compelling eyewitness accounts, some describing intimate behaviors like peering into vehicles or showing curiosity about human children.
It doesn't quite add up.
It's a paradox. This apparent contradiction isn't just an oddity, it's a core reason why the mystery endures. For skeptics, it suggests misidentification, fabrication, or the unreliability of human memory.
Sure.
But for proponents, it highlights maybe a remarkable behavioral adaptability, or perhaps even varying subspecies with different temperaments. It adds layers to the enigma. This very paradox allows both sides to find support for their views and keeps the debate alive and kicking.
So, okay, what does this all mean for where it supposedly lives and how it sustains itself? It's primarily purported to inhabit the wild, deeply forested areas of North America, right? Concentration in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, Oregon, Washington.
That's the classic habitat, yes.
Yes.
It's consistently said to prefer areas with low human population density, significant canopy coverage for concealment, and higher elevations, typically between 1,500 to 2,100 meters. Provides ample reclusion, difficult terrain.
And sightings are very frequent near water sources, which makes sense for any large animal.
Absolutely essential. But crucially, while the Pacific Northwest is the undeniable hotspot, Bigfoot sightings are reported in surprisingly diverse ecosystems across the continent.
Like where?
Well, the lush, humid pine forests of East Texas, the rugged, rocky hill country of Central Texas, even the arid, scrubby landscapes of West Texas.
West Texas. That's vastly different.
Exactly. This broad distribution significantly challenges traditional notions of its habitat preferences. If true, it suggests a truly remarkable adaptability to vastly different environments, from temperate rainforests to semi-deserts.
In terms of population, have there been any estimates? I know it's speculative, but...
Highly speculative, yes. But estimates for Washington state, a primary hotspot, suggest a surprisingly low density, maybe just 240 to 720 individuals in the whole state.
A few.
Potentially. Each individual is hypothesized to maintain a territory of roughly 32 square kilometers within a much larger range, maybe 55,500 square kilometers total for the population. That's a massive amount of ground for a single creature, indicating the sheer scale of the wilderness it might inhabit and, well, the challenge of ever detecting it reliably.
Okay, and diet to support that size.
Bigfoot is believed to be omnivorous, almost certainly a necessity for a large animal needing to sustain itself in such diverse habitats. It requires a substantial caloric intake, estimated at a minimum of 5,000 calories per day, to support its immense size and active lifestyle. Reported food sources encompass a huge variety of plant matter fruits, berries, roots, leaves, nuts like acorns, tree bark, flowers, even conifer needles and lichen. Suggests a very adaptable seasonal foraging strategy.
And on the animal protein side, you mentioned digging for squirrels.
Right. Anecdotal accounts also cite fish, poultry, deer, elk, bears, even roadkill. Deer and elk are often noted as preferred prey.
How would it hunt something like an elk?
Theories include simple scavenging, stealing kills from other predators like cougars or bears, maybe corral hunting, large game by driving them into natural traps, or even consuming seafood in coastal regions.
There are even historical accounts, aren't there, of a berry-eating Sasquatch in BC.
Yes, and another creature consuming a barrel of salted fish from a remote homestead. It illustrates this incredible versatility in its potential diet. So if it exists, it's a creature of remarkable adaptability, able to survive in incredibly diverse environments.
But perhaps its greatest evolution isn't biological at all, is it? It's how it's evolved in our minds, becoming something far more than just a biological mystery.
That's a really key point.
This raises an important question. Bigfoot transcends being just a mysterious entity to become this powerful cultural symbol for environmentalism and untamed wilderness.
Absolutely. By the 1980s, Bigfoot became explicitly associated with environmentalism and a symbol of the wilderness that we need to preserve. You started seeing that narrative emerge more strongly.
So even if unproven, the legend serves a vital social function. It inadvertently focuses public attention on our relationship with nature, the imperative to protect unexplored wild spaces. It says there's still mystery out there, something wild and untamed worth protecting. This demonstrates how folklore, even seemingly fantastical stuff, can actually contribute to contemporary ecological consciousness and inspire real-world conservation efforts. It gives us a tangible, if mythical, ambassador for the wild.
Well put. Okay, let's dive into the evidence locker itself, the stuff people point to. The narrative of Bigfoot is really punctuated by a series of historical incidents that have significantly shaped its legend. They've become foundational myths within the cryptozoological community.
Like Ape Canyon.
Exactly, the Ape Canyon incident of 1924, one of the earliest and most dramatic accounts. It garnered national attention and truly fueled the public's imagination. Gold prospectors, including a man named Fred Beck, reported this terrifying conflict with 8 men near Mount St. Helens in Washington.
They claimed the creatures threw large rocks at their cabin.
Right.
Damaged the roof.
Yeah, narrowly missing them. Beck even claimed to have shot one of the attacking creatures.
But did they find anything?
No. Despite a U.S. Forest Service investigation, they found no compelling evidence, no bodies, no definitive tracks. But stories of mountain devils, or large, hairy, bipedal ape men, had been a persistent part of local folklore for centuries before this event.
Ah, so the context is already there?
Precisely. The Ape Canyon incident didn't create the legend out of thin air, but rather it slotted perfectly into pre-existing belief systems. It solidified its place as a cornerstone in modern Bigfoot lore. It was a terrifying, tangible encounter that resonated with something already in the cultural consciousness.
Okay, what else? There's the Ostman story.
Yes, the Albert Ostman abduction claim, also from 1924. Truly intriguing. Prospector Albert Ostman asserted he was scooped up in a sleeping bag.
Scooped up.
That's his claim. And spent approximately a week living with a Bigfoot family, male, female, 2 younger ones, near Toba Inlet, British Columbia.
How did he escape?
He claimed he only escaped when the Papa Bigfoot got sick after consuming Ostman's chewing tobacco, snuff actually, providing a window for his flight.
Chewing tobacco.
Okay. What's noteworthy here is that Ostman didn't document his experience until 1957, over 30 years later, and only after William Rowe's sighting had become public.
That timing is interesting.
It raises questions, right? Potential influence or embellishment. But it remains a wild, compelling story within the lore.
And the William Rowe encounter in 1955, you mentioned that was a turning point.
It's considered a truly significant turning point, especially in shaping the modern image of Bigfoot. William Rowe formally stated under affidavit in 1957 that he encountered a partly human and partly animal creature while hiking on Mica Mountain in British Columbia.
And he described it very specifically.
Remarkable detail. Approximately 6 feet tall, covered in brown, silver-tipped hair, thick arms extending to its knees, and critically visible breasts, which contributed to his belief it was female.
Why is that sighting so important?
Because it marked a conceptual shift. Earlier Sasquatch accounts sometimes described giant-sized indigenous people or more vaguely defined wild men. Rowe's description shifted it towards the now widely accepted, distinctly ape-like depiction of Bigfoot. It's almost as if Rowe's detailed description provided a new template.
And that visual template was then cemented, I guess, by the most iconic and intensely debated piece of alleged Bigfoot evidence ever, the Patterson-Gimlin film.
The PGF, yeah. Captured on October 20, 1967 by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin in Bluff Creek, California. This short, grainy, 59-second piece of 16-millimeter footage depicts a large, hairy, bipedal humanoid figure.
Patty?
Affectionately known as Patty, yes, walking purposefully along a creek bed. The figure is believed by many to be female due to what appear to be visible breasts.
The detailed analyses of this film are just extensive, and they're what make it so endlessly debated, right?
Absolutely. Studies suggest the subject's height, estimated between 6.5 to 7.5 feet, potentially up to 94 inches.
Which is huge.
Enormous, along with its walking speed of about 3.85 miles per hour, which actually exceeds the average human walking speed over that kind of uneven terrain.
And the body proportions.
What's compelling is the creature's head height to stature ratio, approximately 5.9 heads tall. That's closer to an adult male gorilla, typically 5.5 heads tall, than an average human, who is around 7.5 to 8 heads tall. This specific anatomical proportion is a key argument proponents use for its authenticity.
And the way it walked. The compliant gait.
Exactly. The film displays this unique, compliant gait characterized by noticeably flexed limbs, bent knees, and a slight forward lean as it strides. This isn't just a technical term. It's crucial because a human trying to fake this, especially in a bulky suit, would likely appear stiff, unnaturally rigid, or struggle to maintain balance with such a posture over that ground.
Okay.
Biomechanics experts have proposed that the figure's muscle proportions, what you can glimpse, are consistent with what a large bipedal primate would require for navigating rugged terrain. It indicates a highly specialized and energy-efficient locomotion.
And the feet.
Furthermore, the feet in the film seem to exhibit what's called a mid-tarsal break, a flexibility in the middle of the foot different from a rigid human arch that allows the foot to adapt to uneven ground and grip. This correlates with the kinematics inferred from alleged footprints found at the site.
By the casts from the site.
Casts measured 14.5 to 15 inches long, with the actual foot length reported as maybe 15.5 inches in some analyses.
And here's where it gets really interesting for proponents. The computer analysis.
Right. The North American Science Institute, NASI, reported back in 1998 that forensic computer analysis of digitized copies of the film detected no seams or interfaces indicative of a costume, suggesting a continuous, organic form.
The zipper.
Basically, yeah. They also noted that the subject's knee regularly bent at more than 90 degrees, a range typically beyond human capability, while maintaining such a smooth, powerful stride, especially over that kind of uneven, debris-strewn terrain. Proponents argue this level of detail, this biomechanical consistency, would have been nearly impossible to fake with 1960s special effects technology.
Despite all that analysis, the authenticity of the Patterson-Gimlin film remains incredibly debated.
Oh, intensely. Supporters contended the creature's natural gait, visible muscle definition, unique anatomical details. It's all just too much to fake convincingly back then. Some scientists who've examined it, including those with backgrounds in anatomy and primate locomotion, have concluded it depicts a real unclassified species, or at least that you can't definitively prove it's a hoax based on the visual evidence. For them, the movement is simply too authentic, too specific.
But the skeptics.
Conversely, skeptics maintain it's an elaborate hoax, someone in an ape suit. They often point to the grainy quality, the shakiness which allows for ambiguity, and the creature's seemingly nonchalant behavior while being filmed. Why didn't it react more violently or flee faster? Many argue it's simply a very convincing performance by someone like Bob Hieronymus, who claimed years later he wore the suit, though that's also debated.
And the original film is missing.
The original film's current whereabouts are unknown, which only adds to the mystery, though numerous copies were made before its disappearance.
This film, despite being so inconclusive, has this enduring status as the most famous and enduring piece of Bigfoot evidence.
Absolutely. Its grainy and ambiguous nature leads to this stark dichotomy. To some, this is incontestable proof, but to others, it is merely a man or a woman in a gorilla suit.
That ambiguity is its real power, isn't it?
It really is. It allows individuals to project their pre-existing beliefs onto the footage, thereby reinforcing their convictions, whatever they may be. The film's power thus lies not in definitive proof, which it lacks for many, but in its profound capacity to sustain the mystery and fuel confirmation bias. It makes it a cornerstone of cryptid research and ensures the legend's perpetuation, even in the face of intense skepticism. It allows people to believe.
Okay, so beyond the film, we have the footprints. Hundreds of alleged giant footprints and a few handprints have been reported over time, contributing significantly to the Bigfoot legend. And Ray Wallace played this pivotal, though ultimately controversial, role in popularizing Bigfoot back in '58, right?
Yeah.
He was a logger who made plaster casts of giant footprints near his worksite in Northern California.
Yes, and this act, widely covered by news media like Genzoli's paper, is often cited as the very origin of the modern Bigfoot craze and the widespread use of the name Bigfoot.
But wasn't that proven a hoax?
It was. Years later, after Wallace's death, a relative admitted the famous footprints were indeed a hoax, created using large, carved wooden feet that Wallace himself used to stomp around his work site, apparently as a prank on his crew initially.
Okay, so that casts doubt. But not all casts are dismissed so easily, are they? What about the Cripplefoot casts?
Right, the Cripplefoot casts from 1969. They were particularly influential for physical anthropologist Grover Krantz. Despite being a mainstream academic, he became a strong advocate for Bigfoot's existence after studying them.
Why those specific casts?
Discovered in Bossburg, Washington, this particular print appeared authentically deformed, as if the creature had suffered an injury to its foot, hence Cripplefoot. Krantz, along with a Dutch professor, noted microscopic dermal ridges and characteristics consistent with a living object able to spread its toes. For Krantz, these details, especially the apparent pathology, were simply too complex and too naturally flawed to be a deliberate hoax.
Then there's the Skookum cast from 2000, another highly publicized piece of evidence.
Yes, this was a large, partial body imprint found in a muddy wallow in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in Washington. Prominent Bigfoot proponents, including the late Grover Krantz and Jeffrey Meldrum, examined it. Meldrum claimed to find evidence of dermatoglyphics, skin ridges, and what he believed was the impression of the foot, forearm, hip, and buttock area of a reclining Bigfoot. It was a sensation in the Bigfoot community.
But what did mainstream science say?
Well, subsequent scientific analysis largely dismissed the Skookum cast as evidence for Bigfoot. Independent studies concluded it was most likely an imprint of an elk, a conclusion strongly supported by the discovery of actual elk hair found at the site and photographic comparisons showing patterns consistent with an elk wallowing in the mud. Critics also noted that the cast, while exciting, was perhaps treated more as a sensational discovery to confirm existing beliefs, rather than being subjected to rigorous, objective, scientific scrutiny from the outset. It lacked the controls needed for new species identification.
And a significant challenge for many footprint finds is just misidentification, right? Bears.
Exactly. Some alleged footprints are clearly identifiable as prints from known animals, particularly bears. A bear's hind paw, which can be quite large, can overlap its front paw when walking, creating a track that looks strikingly like a large, human-like bipedal print, especially in soft ground or snow.
So many prints, like Ray Wallace's, were proven fraudulent. Others just remain unexplained due to ambiguity or lack of detail.
That sums it up well. It's a mixed bag, heavily leaning towards misidentification or hoax.
Okay, moving on to audio evidence. Alleged Bigfoot vocalizations. There's a whole range of sounds reported, isn't there?
A surprising range, yes. Guttural grunts, deep howls, intimidating growls, piercing screams, high-pitched whistles, and those distinctive wood-knocking sounds we mentioned.
And recordings exist.
Oh, yes. Some recordings, like the famous Sierra sounds from the early 1970s, claim to capture intricate communication among what was believed to be a Bigfoot family. They feature complex vocalizations that some proponents argue suggest a form of language dubbed samurai chatter by some.
But what does scientific analysis say about these recordings?
Generally, it's yielded skeptical conclusions. While initial analyses by some university sound specialists suggested certain sounds might not have been produced by a human voice due to the implied vocal tract length, these same experts later conceded that humans could indeed imitate the specific sound characteristics by simply cupping their hands around their mouths or using various vocal techniques to alter resonance. So potentially faked.
Potentially. Even Grover Krantz, a strong proponent based on physical evidence, after listening to numerous tapes, ultimately found no compelling reason to believe them, concluding that sound recordings are inherently poor evidence due to the ease of fabrication and misinterpretation.
What are the common alternative explanations for the strange sounds people hear?
Well, vocalizations from known animals are a big one.
Yeah.
Foxes, coyotes, bobcats, even owls can produce surprisingly human-like or startling calls, especially at night.
Right.
Environmental factors play a role, too. Temperature inversions, wind, canyon acoustics, they can all alter how sounds travel and how we perceive them. Hoaxes are definitely a factor. And then there's sound blasting.
What's that?
It's a technique used by some Bigfoot hunters where they play pre-recorded calls, often very loudly, into the wilderness, hoping to elicit a response. But then other people nearby might hear these recordings and mistake them for genuine sounds, creating a confusing feedback loop. Okay. So the consistent pattern with alleged Bigfoot evidence footprints, DNA, audio, is often dismissal as misidentification, hoax, or just lacking scientific rigor.
Yes, it consistently highlights the stringent standards of the scientific method. The burden of proof really rests firmly on those who assert Bigfoot's existence.
What about other purported evidence?
Hair samples.
Hair samples are frequently found, but most alleged Bigfoot hair samples submitted for analysis have been identified as belonging to known animals: deer, bears, raccoons, dogs, cows, even humans.
But there was that controversial DNA study.
Dr. Melba Ketchum's 2012 DNA study. Yes, it claimed to find human-like mitochondrial DNA mixed with unknown nuclear DNA sequences, suggesting a hybrid species. However, it lacks wide acceptance by mainstream science due to significant methodological concerns, questions about sample provenance, contamination, the analysis itself, and the fact it was published in a journal she apparently created herself, bypassing standard peer review. Crucially, there's been a complete lack of independent replication.
Okay. And there was something about a severed hand in Montana. Yes, a highly debated 2002 incident involving what was claimed to be a severed hand found, reportedly tested initially as not human, not any known primate. But its chain of custody, the testing methods, and the overall scientific validity were widely questioned and never substantiated.
So not definitive. What about scat?
Alleged Bigfoot scat samples almost invariably get traced back to known wildlife bears, coyotes, etc. through DNA analysis.
But then there are the structures, the broken branches, the peepees.
Right. Some researchers attribute unusual formations in forested areas to Bigfoot. Complex patterns of broken and twisted foliage, stacked lodgepole pines, or those teepee-like structures. Proponents hypothesize these as territorial markings or shelters, requiring immense strength and maybe cognitive ability.
Didn't one group claim to find nests?
The Olympic Project, yes. They claimed discovery of nests in the Pacific Northwest that primatologists, after reviewing images, concluded appeared consistent with structures created by a large primate. But again, definitive proof linking them to an unknown primate is missing, and those reports of entire deer skeletons suspended high in trees. That certainly suggests immense strength and a very unusual behavior pattern, if true, but it remains anecdotal.
What's fascinating amidst all this is what you could call a scientific arms race that seems to have emerged.
That's a good way to put it.
As technology advances, both proponents and skeptics use increasingly sophisticated methods, which paradoxically seems to ensure the mystery persists rather than being definitively resolved.
Exactly. Bigfoot researchers are adopting what they describe as rigorous scientific methodologies, using advanced tools like environmental DNA, eDNA analysis from soil or water, high-resolution thermal imaging cameras, remote motion-activated camera traps, even drone surveillance with LiDAR.
But mainstream science uses the same tools.
And often more advanced ones, yes. Mainstream scientists use these very same techniques to scrutinize and often debunk claims, providing alternative, known explanations based on the data. This continuous cycle implies that technological progress, rather than definitively resolving the mystery, often just leads to more sophisticated arguments from both sides, deepening the divide rather than bridging it.
So, like, DNA analysis is seen as definitive, but then there are issues with contamination.
Precisely. While DNA analysis is widely seen as the most definitive method for species identification, inherent challenges of Bigfoot DNA testing, like sample degradation in the environment, contamination from researchers or other animals, the difficulty of getting clean samples, and the consistent identification of known animal DNA mean that new methods are often met with new forms of skepticism or inconclusive results. The enduring mystery isn't just a lack of data, but the ever-evolving interpretive frameworks and the stringent scientific rigor required for proof.
Okay, so where does this leave the mainstream scientific consensus? What's the official verdict, so to speak?
Well, the core idea is pretty clear. The vast majority of the mainstream scientific community maintains a skeptical stance regarding Bigfoot's existence.
And cryptozoology itself.
Cryptozoology, the study of hidden or unknown animals, is widely considered a pseudoscience by academics, mainly because it doesn't consistently adhere to the scientific method. It often focuses heavily on creatures from folklore and anecdotal reports rather than consistently identifying new species through rigorous, verifiable methods. And crucially, many cryptozoological claims lack falsifiability, the ability for them to be definitively proven wrong.
What are the main arguments against existence from a scientific perspective?
They're pretty fundamental, resting on basic biological and ecological principles. Firstly, and most importantly, there's a significant, undeniable absence of concrete physical evidence.
No bodies, no bones.
Exactly. For a large, undiscovered primate population to exist, scientists emphasize there should be physical proof. Remains, carcasses, fossils, or at least verifiable DNA that stands up to scrutiny. Wildlife experts point out that even large mammal bones, like those of deer or bears, are frequently found in remote locations. They don't just vanish instantly. This contradicts arguments about quip decomposition, especially for a creature of Bigfoot's purported size. The sheer continent-wide absence of such remains is incredibly striking.
Okay, what else? Eyewitness testimony, there's so much of it.
There is over 10,000 accounts in the continental U.S. over 50 years alone, reportedly. But eyewitness testimony, while compelling emotionally, is often inconsistent and highly prone to influence. Environmental factors like poor lighting, distance, brief sightings, challenging terrain, even the witness's emotional state.
Fear, excitement.
Exactly. And critically, human psychology. Our memory isn't a perfect video recorder, it's reconstructive. It can be influenced by pre-existing beliefs, suggestion, and emotions can easily distort or omit important details. This leads to sincere but ultimately inaccurate recollections sometimes.
And the lack of clear photos or videos in the age of smartphones.
That's the third point. Despite the ubiquitous presence of cameras, smartphones, trail cams, dash cams, no definitive critically scrutinized imagery has emerged. Most alleged visual evidence remains blurry, out of focus, distant, or otherwise inconclusive. It contributes to the whole blob squatch phenomenon, seeing something vaguely creature-shaped in a poor quality image.
And finally, ecological feasibility.
Right. Can the environment actually support a breeding population of such large creatures undetected? Scientists question this due to the complete lack of corresponding ecological evidence. Consistent nests, extensive feeding sites, clear game trails different from known animals, or even a noticeable environmental impact you'd expect from a large primate population.
And they'd need a decent population size to avoid inbreeding, right?
Exactly. A significant population, likely hundreds or even thousands spread across its range, would be required to maintain genetic diversity and avoid extinction. Such numbers would dramatically increase the likelihood of definitive discovery, finding bodies, clear tracks, hair, scat, or having unambiguous encounters. The lack of all this is a major hurdle.
So, if it's not Bigfoot, what does science say is actually going on out there? What are people seeing?
Common explanations usually start with the simplest answer: misidentification of known animals.
Bears again.
The American black bear is a particularly common culprit, yes. They can stand upright on their hind legs for surprisingly long periods, especially if curious, threatened, or even injured. In dense foliage, at dusk, or in poor lighting, a standing bear can be easily mistaken for a large, bipedal, hairy creature.
And the data backs this up.
There's a demonstrable correlation. Data analysis shows a strong overlap between Bigfoot sighting hotspots and areas with high black bear populations across North America. Grizzly bears, too, which can stand 8 to 9 feet tall, also contribute to misidentifications in their range.
What about escaped apes? Could that explain some sightings?
It's occasionally proposed, yes, that sightings might involve misidentified chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans that have escaped from captivity, maybe zoos, private collections, research facilities. This explanation is sometimes applied to regional variants like the skunk ape in Florida, where the climate might be more hospitable for an escaped primate to survive for a while.
And just
Humans.
simply humans, yes. People themselves, hunters in bulky camouflage or fursuits, individuals suffering from mental illness living off-grid as feral humans, or reclusive hermits have undoubtedly been mistaken for Bigfoot over the years.
And sadly, we have to mention hoaxes again.
We do. Hoaxes are a significant factor, a perpetual thorn in the side of legitimate inquiry. A large number of alleged pieces of evidence, footprints, photos, videos, even bodies supposedly found, have been definitively proven or openly admitted to be hoaxes. Ray Wallace's famous wooden feet are the classic example. These hoaxes contaminate the evidence pool and make it even harder for the public and researchers to discern genuine reports from outright fraud. Beyond deliberate deception, there are fascinating psychological phenomena at play too, right? Pareidolia?
Yes, pareidolia. That's our innate human tendency to perceive familiar patterns, especially faces or figures, in random or ambiguous stimuli. Think seeing shapes in clouds. This leads to terms like blob swatch, for those poor quality photos where a tree stump, a shadow, or just a blur might be interpreted as a creature.
And confirmation bias.
Huge factor. That's where individuals, already predisposed to believe in Bigfoot, interpret ambiguous signs, a broken branch, an unusual footprint that could be erosion, a strange sound in a way that confirms their existing beliefs. It fuels this cycle where belief drives discovery, even if the objective evidence is inconclusive or points elsewhere.
What about social influence, like seeing something because you heard about it?
Absolutely. Mass hysteria or social contagion effects. The rapid spread of stories, especially amplified by media, can lead to waves of sightings as people become more aware and perhaps more suggestible. They might reinterpret ambiguous experiences through the lens of Bigfoot. A great example is the documented increase in Bigfoot sightings during the run of the popular reality TV series Finding Bigfoot. Heightened awareness and suggestion likely led to more reported encounters.
And at a deeper level, fear of the unknown.
That plays a role too. The enduring fascination taps into humanity's fundamental relationship with the unknown, maybe even a fear of it. It provides an outlet for anxieties about unpredictable events or the wildness that remains, or that we wish remains, in the world. Bigfoot's plausibility, existing in remote, hard-to-reach areas, combined with its inherent mystery and variability, allows it to persist as this captivating figure in our collective imagination.
Okay. But despite all this mainstream scientific skepticism, there's still a dedicated and passionate community actively seeking definitive evidence, right?
Absolutely. Key figures have emerged in this effort, really driving the research from the proponent side. Grover Krantz, the physical anthropologist we mentioned,
Right.
he went against academic conventions, spent a significant portion of his career arguing for Sasquatch's reality based on anatomical principles. He was initially doubtful of the Patterson-Gimlin film, but became convinced by the Cripplefoot plaster casts, arguing the anatomical details, the specific deformation, the dermal ridges, they were too complex for a hoax back then.
And he had the Gigantopithecus theory.
Yes, he famously theorized Sasquatch as a surviving relic hominoid, possibly descended from Gigantopithecus blacki, a giant ape known from fossils in Asia that might have migrated to North America via the Bering Land Bridge centuries ago. He even tried to formally name it Gigantopithecus canadensis in a scientific publication to force recognition, but it wasn't accepted.
And then there's Jeffrey Meldrum today.
Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, yes, a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University. He also believes Bigfoot exists and approaches it from an anatomical perspective. His book, Sasquatch, Legend Meets Science, meticulously examines alleged tracks, purported skin ridges, and of course the Patterson-Gimlin film. He argues compellingly, for proponents, that the gait and features seen in the film are inconsistent with a human in a suit based on biomechanics.
Though his work has faced criticism, too.
It has. It should be noted that his research, while detailed and influential within the Bigfoot community, has faced criticism from the broader scientific community, with some deeming his methodologies or conclusions as falling into pseudoscience due to reliance on anecdotal evidence or controversial interpretations.
And organizations like the BFRO.
Organizations like the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, BFRO, are perhaps the most widely known. They maintain a huge online database of eyewitness accounts, which they attempt to vet, and they organize expeditions using thermal imaging cameras, remote trail cams, parabolic microphones, and other technologies.
And Matt Moneymaker, the founder.
Yes, Matt Moneymaker popularized techniques like sound blasting, playing alleged Bigfoot vocalizations into the wilderness, and wood knocking as active research techniques to try and elicit responses from any potential creatures in the area.
And the NAWAC, North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Right, NAWAC. They focus specifically on proving the existence of the wood ape, their preferred term, hypothesizing it as an extant North American ape, possibly related to Gigantopithecus blacki.
And their methods.
They employ advanced field methods, extensive camera trapping grids, long night vigils using thermal cameras, biological sample collection protocols, even experimenting with novel nanotrackers for highly precise movement monitoring if they could ever deploy one.
But they have a controversial stance on collection, right?
Right, they do. Controversially, NELAC explicitly adopts a strategy aiming for the lethal collection of a type specimen. They argue, quite pragmatically from their view, that it's the only way to obtain the definitive physical evidence, a body that would be necessary for formal scientific recognition and, ironically, potential species protection in the long run. It's a very contentious position.
And this brings us back to that arms race concept.
Yeah.
This continuous back and forth between proponents using new tech and skeptics applying rigorous scrutiny. It just ensures the mystery endures. It seems perpetually on the edge of proof, yet never quite reaches it.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. But beyond the scientific debate, Bigfoot has undeniably transcended its origins as just a cryptid. It's become this pervasive cultural icon in American and Canadian folklore, maybe even globally now.
Oh, definitely. Its image and narrative permeate nearly every form of popular media. In film, its portrayal ranges so widely, from outright horror like the cheesy 1970 Bigfoot movie or The Legend of Boggy Creek in '72, that pseudo-documentary that terrified a generation.
Scarred me as a kid.
Right. to family-friendly comedies like Harry and the Hendersons in 1987. That film was huge in portraying Bigfoot as friendly and misunderstood, marking a significant, deliberate shift in his public image towards something more benign, more sympathetic.
You really do see it everywhere now, in television and advertising. Bigfoot and Sasquatch are frequently used as pop culture shorthand, promotional gimmicks.
Like the jerky ads.
Exactly, the jerky ads. But also restaurant chains like Red Robin and Boston Pizza, beer brands like Kokanee, mattresses from Purple, Progressive Insurance, and even that personal care brand, Dr. Swatch. It's instantly recognizable branding.
Also been adopted as a mascot, hasn't it? For sports teams like the old Seattle Supersonics Squatch.
Yep, Squatch the mascot.
And even official state mascots. Washington used Harrison Bigfoot for its centennial in 1989, and Oregon had Sesky the Sasquatch for its sesquicentennial in 2009. And during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bigfoot was even humorously used as a symbol for social distancing campaigns. Be like Bigfoot. Practice social distancing. Stay 6 feet apart.
It's incredibly versatile as a symbol. And in literature, Bigfoot myths serve as this rich source of creative inspiration, exploring themes far beyond simple monster stories. Mystery, freedom, solitude, the untamed beauty of the wilderness.
Right. Authors use Bigfoot as a compelling metaphor sometimes for independence, resilience, embodying a wildness that resists domestication or control.
And children's literature in particular has really embraced the myth. Books like Bigfoot Mountain or The Littlest Bigfoot use the creature to explore relatable themes, grief, self-acceptance, celebrating differences, turning a potential monster into a symbol of acceptance and uniqueness.
So it's not just a cultural icon, it's an economic powerhouse in some places.
It really is. The enduring popularity of Bigfoot has fostered a thriving tourism industry, especially in the Pacific Northwest hotspots, but elsewhere too.
Bigfoot festivals?
Bigfoot festivals, yeah, like Bigfoot Days in Willow Creek, California, which proudly calls itself the Bigfoot capital of the world, and the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, among others. They attract thousands of enthusiasts and curious visitors annually.
What happens at these things?
They offer this unique blend of entertainment, education, and local culture. You get speakers, researchers, eyewitnesses, guided tours of sighting areas, evidence exhibitions, even contests like Bigfoot calling or track-making competitions. It's a whole scene.
And the economic impact must
Well,
be significant for small towns.
quite substantial. Visitors travel often from far away, generating significant revenue for local businesses, hotels, restaurants, gas stations, and especially gift shops selling every kind of Bigfoot-themed merchandise imaginable. Local vendors thrive, it reinforces community identity, and encourages future tourism.
I saw a figure. Bigfoot tourism reportedly generates over $140 million annually for the American economy.
That's one estimate, yeah. It's a testament to its enduring appeal and marketability. And you have niche attractions like the Bigfoot geocaching trails in places like Ohio, further contributing to regional tourism growth. It proves that even a mystery, maybe especially a mystery, can be a major economic driver.
But at its core, why? Why this persistent fascination? It seems deeply rooted in human psychology and broader societal significance.
I think so. On one level, the legend provides a safe, intriguing outlet for humanity's fundamental relationship with the unknown, maybe even a fear of it. Anxiety over unpredictable, unfamiliar events. Bigfoot, existing in remote, uncharted areas, embodies this uncertainty, allowing us to engage with a mystery that remains just beyond our grasp, a sort of controlled encounter with the wild.
And it also fulfills the desire for mystery itself, right?
Yeah.
In a world that feels increasingly mapped and explained.
Exactly. Belief in Bigfoot can fulfill this deep-seated human desire for mystery, for enchantment, maybe offering a sense of hope that humanity hasn't entirely conquered or destroyed nature. The idea that a large, undiscovered primate could still exist, hidden in vast wilderness areas. It suggests that perhaps the planet isn't utterly tamed, not completely known, that there's still secrets to uncover, still wildness to behold.
So it becomes a symbol.
It highlights the legend's capacity to serve as a symbol of untouched wilderness and, perhaps, even a quiet rebellion against modern conformity, against a world increasingly dominated by data and algorithms. It resonates with a longing for something truly wild and primal.
And it also reflects this complex interplay of perception, truth, and belief that we talked about.
Definitely. The human mind is incredibly adept at creating explanations for events it can't immediately interpret. And maybe people often want to believe in cryptids, in mysteries. This is evident in how individuals interpret ambiguous evidence, that shadow, that sound, that print, often aligning it with their existing beliefs.
Like the confirmation bias again?
Precisely, or how increased media exposure, like we saw with finding Bigfoot, can demonstrably lead to a surge in reported sightings. It's this powerful feedback loop between what we see, what we expect to see, and what culture tells us might be out there.
Yeah. The continued popularity of Bigfoot, despite the consistent lack of definitive scientific proof, really underscores its profound role as a cultural mirror. It reflects our collective fears, our hopes, and humanity's ongoing quest to explore the mysteries that still exist in the world, even in an age of satellites and constant surveillance.
So, to sort of wrap up our journey here, the phenomenon of Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, it presents this truly captivating intersection of ancient folklore, modern cultural narrative, and persistent ongoing scientific inquiry. From its deep roots in diverse wildman legends across global cultures and its profound embedding in North American indigenous traditions, the concept of a large, elusive humanoid creature has evolved significantly over time.
And that popularization in 1958, driven by media attention around those famous footprints, that really transformed diffuse regional tales into a nationally, even internationally recognized cryptid.
And that media amplification, in turn, has demonstrably influenced public perception and even the frequency of reported sightings. It illustrates this dynamic feedback loop between cultural narratives and perceived reality. It shapes what people think they see.
We've seen how reported characteristics consistently describe Bigfoot as this massive, bipedal, hairy primate, exhibiting a range of behaviors from extreme shyness to surprising curiosity, making those distinctive vocalizations like wood knocks and howls.
Its purported habitat spans vast, low population density forested areas across North America, suggesting a highly adaptable omnivorous diet is necessary for survival. However, the sheer volume of detailed sightings, contrasted with the creature's alleged elusiveness and that stubborn absence of physical remains, that highlights a thematic paradox.
Yeah, that paradox keeps coming up.
And it continues to fuel speculation and debate, keeping the core mystery alive and kicking.
And beyond its literal existence, or lack thereof, Bigfoot has assumed this powerful symbolic role, representing environmentalism, the allure of untouched wilderness, maybe humanity's enduring connection or desire for connection to the wild.
And this cultural function translates into tangible economic benefits through that thriving Bigfoot-themed tourism industry, the festivals, the merchandise across the continent. Yet, despite the compelling anecdotal evidence and the dedicated efforts of cryptozoological organizations,
Mainstream science remains largely skeptical.
yes, due to the consistent absence of concrete physical evidence, the bodies, the bones, the unambiguous DNA, and a wealth of consistent alternative explanations, from bears to hoaxes to psychology.
And that continuous arms race between proponents and skeptics, where advancements in technology are met with increasingly sophisticated scrutiny, ensures the mystery persists. It's constantly evolving, but never quite resolved.
Exactly. In essence, Bigfoot endures not merely as an unproven biological entity, but as this complex, multifaceted cultural construct. Its profound longevity is sustained by a blend of ancient human fascination with the unknown, the powerful influence of media in shaping collective belief, and the deep psychological resonance it holds in an increasingly explored and perhaps disenchanted world.
So, while definitive scientific proof remains elusive, the multifaceted nature of the Bigfoot phenomenon, the history, the culture, the science, the psychology, ensures its continued relevance. It's a subject of both popular intrigue and academic study, reflecting humanity's ongoing quest to understand the boundaries of the natural world and maybe the depths of its own imagination.
Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps. What does the enduring legend of Bigfoot truly say about us? About our collective desire for a world that still holds secrets, for a wildness that maybe defies easy explanation? What does it reflect about what we want the world to be?